think reality is and what we think is important, that we might be missing what God is really doing here and what God could be doing through our lives. Because life is way more than shadows on a wall. There's a lot more to life than just what we think is important. There's a guy in the Old Testament book of Numbers. His name was Balaam. And he went through a very similar experience. His story is basically a story of a guy who was so focused on his own agenda that he almost missed what God's agenda was for his life. It's in Numbers 22. I want to read you this whole story. And I want you just to see through this story, this guy's life, and how a lot of times we get so focused on our own story that we could be missing God's story. And the point of tonight, just to kind of get us running with this Heritage series, is don't miss God's story because of your story. Okay? This is Numbers 22, starting verse 21. It's the story of Balaam. Let me set it up for you. Balaam was a kind of a priest or like a witchcraft kind of guy that he knew how to call down curses upon people. And so there was, the Israelites are wandering in the desert. They're moving on from Mount Sinai. They're going to go up to the Promised Land. And there's this nation called Moab, and they're scared to death of the Israelites. They think the Israelites are going to attack them. I mean, there are like 4+ million people wandering through the desert and with no like permanent place. So the Moabites are like, they're going to attack. So this guy Balak, he summons Balaam and says, hey, I want you to call down a curse on Israel. Okay, so the night before Balaam's going to go up and meet Balak, God talks to Balaam and he says, don't do it. Don't do this. And so Balaam agrees and goes, okay. But look what happens. Verse 21, this is the very next day. Balaam got up in the morning, saddled his donkey, and went with the princes of Moab. So he's kind of directly disobeying what God said. But God was very angry when he went. And the angel of the Lord stood in the road to oppose him. Balaam was riding on his donkey, and his 2 servants were with him. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with a drawn sword in his hand, she turned off the road into a field. Balaam beat her to get her back on the road. So what's happening here is this. He's riding on a donkey, and he's on this road. It's got a kind of a wide path. There's all kinds of like area off to the side. There's an angel standing in the middle of this road with a sword drawn, ready to kill. It says to oppose, but he's ready to kill Balaam for disobeying God. Balaam can't see the angel. His donkey can see the angel, but he can't see the angel. The donkey turns off the side of the road, and Balaam is so focused on his agenda that he starts beating his donkey to get it back on the road. Okay? The importance of the scenery is going to be very, very specific and important. So I want you to pay attention to the scenery that's going on. Big, wide road, all kinds of space. Then it says this. Then the angel of the Lord stood in a narrow path between 2 vineyards with walls on both sides. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, she pressed close to the wall, crushing Balaam's foot against it. So he beat her again. So the road is narrowing, right? There's not a lot of space to look off to the left and the right. There's pretty much space to look forward. Balaam still can't see the angel in front of him with the sword. The donkey still can. The donkey presses up close against the wall to get around the angel. And Balaam gets ticked off because he's so focused on what he wants to do and what he needs to do that day that he beats his donkey again. Then it says this. Then the angel of the Lord the 3rd time moved on ahead and stood in a narrow place where there was no room to turn either to the right or to the left. Basically saying this. The road was so narrow that Balaam had to see the angel. He had to see. It was right in front of him. There's nowhere else to go. But then it says this. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, she lay down under Balaam, and he was angry and beat her with his staff. Then the Lord opened the donkey's mouth, and she said to Balaam, What have I done to you to make you beat me these 3 times? Now, I paused here when I read this the first time, and I thought, okay, if an animal starts talking to me, that might get my attention that something bigger is going on here. Does it get Balaam's attention? No, because he responds back to the talking animal. If your dog, like if you have a dog and your dog starts talking to you, you'd think I'd stop and go, wait a second, this is like Exorcist weird, okay? Something's going on here. No, he starts yelling back at the donkey. They get into like a yelling match. Balaam answers the donkey, "You've made a fool of me. If I had a sword in my hand, I'd kill you right now." He's so focused on his own deal and his own agenda that he isn't really seeing what's going on here. The donkey said to Balaam, "Am I not your own donkey, which you have always ridden to this day? Have I been in the habit of doing this to you?" Good question. Balaam answers, "No," he said. Then the Lord opened Balaam's eyes, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with his sword drawn. So he bowed low and fell face down. The angel of the Lord asked him, "Why have you beaten your donkey these 3 times? I have come here to oppose you because your path is a reckless one before me. The donkey saw me and turned away from me these 3 times. If she had not turned away, I would certainly have killed you by now, but I would have spared her." Balaam said to the angel of the Lord, "I have sinned. I did not realize that you were standing in the road to oppose me. Now if you are displeased, I will go back." The angel of the Lord said to Balaam, "No, go with the men, but speak only what I tell you." So Balaam went with the princess of Balak. I picked up 3 key thoughts from this story as I read it. And they pertain to Balaam here, but I think they pertain to us as well. First key thought is this: Balaam is so focused on his own agenda that he is missing God's agenda totally. He's so focused on, I have to go on my donkey up to meet Balak with all these princes. That's my mission today. He's so focused on that he cannot see what God has placed right in front of him. Second thought, the key thought that I saw as I read this was that God isn't hiding his agenda. A donkey can see it. Okay? God isn't hiding his agenda. Balaam just isn't looking for it. Balaam is not looking in the right place. In fact, he's beating his donkey, the one who actually can see God's agenda. Okay? And the third key thought I saw from this is this: sometimes God has to use extraordinary measures to get people's attention. God had to use an extraordinary measure to get Balaam's attention here by making his donkey talk to him. And so I thought about this in my life. I thought about this in your guys' life. We get so focused on our own agenda that we could be missing God's agenda. God isn't hiding his agenda from us. He's not hiding what's going on from us. But a lot of times, if we're honest, we're just not looking for it. And sometimes God has to use extraordinary measures just to get our attention, to help us pay attention and go, oh, God's doing something here. But I missed it because I was so focused on what I'm doing and what's going on with me. And my fear is this, is that we are missing out on what God wants to do in our lives. And that what God wants to do in our county, what God wants to do in our city, what God wants to do in your school, what God wants to do in your neighborhoods. My fear is we're missing that because we're so focused on what we think we want to do. We're so focused on our agenda that we could be missing out on what God wants us to do. We're so focused on the shadows on the wall in the cave that we can't see that there's life going on all around us and that there's something bigger and something better. So what are we supposed to do with this? How are we supposed to react after we know this? Well, let me give you a couple things, a couple thoughts. First, I think that every day we need to pause and we need to ask, what is God or what could God be doing around me that I need to pay attention to? Every day, pause and just say, okay, God, what are you up to? What do I need to pay attention to that God would want me to pay attention to today? Second thought is this. Every morning, with that attitude, just ask God, God, reveal what you want me to know today. Reveal what you want me to see today. Reveal what your agenda is for my day. You know, it may not be what I thought, but that's what you want. Another thought is this. You got to daily remind yourself, stop looking down. Stop only focusing on me. There is something bigger here. There is something better going on here. God is doing something around me. I need to pay attention to it. Remind yourself of that every single day. Ask yourself, what do I need to pay attention to? Ask God, God, reveal that to me. And then make a conscious effort to stop only focusing on you and focus on what God wants to do in your life. Because life isn't just about shadows on a wall or whatever it is we've got going on that day. Life isn't just about your date on Friday night, or life isn't just about, whatever you got going on after lunch. There's something bigger to life that God has going on, and he wants to invite you to be a part of that. But you got to stop focusing on just your agenda and realize, I need to pay attention to what God has going on here. Don't miss God's story because of your story. Okay? Let's pray and go out of